Hello and welcome. My name is Fake Fairytale and welcome to my DungeonDraft tutorial series. So, some of you might already know who I am, but for those of you who don't, I make battle maps. I made quite a few battle maps in the past few months, some that you might have seen. This one's from last week. It's a church battle map. It performed very well, and I'm very, very proud of it. It was really cool to see one of my maps perform so well. Like none of them had done before. Another map you might have seen is one of the storm battle maps, or a tavern battle map that I used, that I made, quite a while ago, or one of the tutorials I wrote on the different topics of making a map, like shading or just my workflow in general. And today I decided to record this video because every time I publish a map, I often get the same few questions about how I put the atmosphere in my maps and how I can make them look so organic. And those are things that I think are very hard to explain via text, like I've done with the other tutorials, which were some a bit longer, but other ones quite quick and easy with a few images. And an idea popped into my head to just record what I do when I make a map. And I want to do this by making an example house. Just simple rural house, not too fancy. We'll be doing like 1 or 2 rooms, a kitchen, a living room, maybe a bedroom upstairs later on, and just show you what I do, tell you and explain you the things I do, why I do it, what it's good for, how you could do it, and show you how I go about making my map. I hope that a lot of the tips and tricks that I learned over the past few months will be conveyed and will be something you can use as well. There are definitely things that I would have liked to know when I started out. But it's great to have them all summarized in just one series. So that's what I'm going to try to do here. As you already might notice, well, let me quickly go back. I use very different assets than the ones built in DungeonDraft. This is because I use the Forgotten Adventure asset packs. They have a different art style, something that I just really like. It looks really cool, really neat, a lot of details. It's just, well, it has my preference, and they have an overhaul modification that not replaces, but adds practically all the assets and more that were already in DungeonDraft in their own art style, and giving you the opportunity to create beautiful images like this. On occasion, if you're already familiar with Forgotten Adventures, then you might not recognize everything that's in there. That's because I also use assets from White Fox Works. She makes Forgotten Adventure style asset packs and fills in the niches that they haven't already filled in themselves. So if you see something you don't recognize but you do use Forgotten Adventures, you might want to check her out. I'll link both of them in the description of this video so that you guys can check out their Patreons. It's really cool. They deserve all the love that they get, and I hope you're gonna like it too. So in that case, without further ado, I would like to get started with the map. So how I would like to go about this is I'll start out with from the bottom up. We'll do some texturing first. I'll show you how I try to make organic looking maps that are not just one patch of grass, but use different textures to make it a bit more interesting than a regular grass field. We'll do a layout of the house and the key pieces of furniture, and I would like to keep these videos relatively short, about 20 minutes a piece, so they're easy to watch and don't take too much of your time. And we'll just walk through it step by step. I'll show you all the tips and tricks that I have, and we will progress till eventually we can call it finished. So to start out, we'll choose a few different textures to use as the floor and the grass here. First of all, I've done this quite a few times before, so I already know which ones I want. I want the grass texture, I want some dirt. We'll use dirt number 4. Let me see, there we go. We want to use some different kinds of grass to make sure that you have some variety, and for that we want to use the sparse patches that they have, all built in Forgotten Adventures. There we go, we'll take that, and we want something as a path. There we go, cool. So we're gonna start out by putting down the textures, and there are different ways to do this. You can just click your mouse and have it all appear. The problem with this though is that it creates very sharp edges and it just doesn't look organic. If you go out in the woods, you won't find a piece of grass with a perfectly round circle in there. That's just a bit weird. So in order to make it all blend together, we'll delete this for a moment. We'll just rapidly click on the field and spread it out a little bit. And in this way, because we started in the center, it will be concentrated more in the center of the map, which is also where the building will be. And that blocks out a bit of the sunlight, so grass has a harder time to grow. I just spread out a little bit more here and there, and we'll make the circle a bit smaller, and around the edges we'll put in some grass sparse. And we give it a bit more texture. And you can go as crazy as you want with this, especially with the Forgotten Adventure assets. You have forest leaves, gravel, you have anything you want. As you can see, the list goes on and on and on. You can even do wooden floor textures if you like. But you don't need that much. You can just put it up like this. I really like how it looks already. We'll put down a path in a minute when we have decided where the front of the house will be and where the doors will be. And we'll work our way further out from there. Later on in the videos, I would also like to add some trees and some plants and show you how I go about that as well. But first, it's time for some walls. And we'll start with, I really like the plaster walls that they have here. There we go. First thing we want to do is we turn off the shadow. I don't like the built-in shadows, they're quite harsh. I can show you quickly. You have like a very straight edge, and especially when you have them interject with each other, you get pieces of the shade that are darker than the rest. It looks just honestly quite weird, and I don't like that. So instead we'll just turn it off, and we'll just go about the map like so. We'll give it a bit of an interesting shape, like this T. Instead of just making it rectangular, we're in a bit of a rural area. Space is not really an issue, so we'll give it a bit of an interesting shape so that we have something nice to work with. And I would first, before I add the doors, like to add indoor walls, and we'll just use the ashen wood here. We'll go one over here and one over here, and then you have a living room, the kitchen, and the hallway. Next, we add some doors. I prefer it to be a bit further down. There we go, and let's change it up a little bit by adding just an open doorway for one room into the other. Now we're going to need some windows as well. So we'll just spread them around a little bit. I want one over here. I would like a larger window on the side there. We'll put in two over here, one over there. Let's say one over here and one over there. So we have windows on all sides of the building. Natural light will come in. That's something we're going to be working with later as well when we use the light tools. And it just looks good. Now, one thing you'll already notice is that walls overlapping each other, that looks weird. And this is something I've seen more people struggle with. I did as well, until one person in a Discord mentioned this marvelous idea of placing pillars on top of walls that cross each other. There we go. You take a simple pillar wood ashen. We're going to put it on layer 700, and we're just going, one second, turn off the shadows again. I'm just going to put it in every corner of the building, and also over here where it connects with the indoor walls. And now it already looks frankly quite a bit better. You don't have weird angles anymore, just nice and square. If you look up a few medieval buildings, you'll see that these kind of pillars are quite common actually. So also for the sake of realism, if that's important to you, this is quite a great way to go. And we also want to put down the path, because we know we have a front door here. Let's put up the grid for a moment and have it dive out down here. There we go. Perfect. Now we also want to add a bit more dirt around the edges of the building, because, well, generally speaking, the building will block out sunlight, which makes it hard for the grass to grow there. So we'll make it a bit dirty around here, and we'll do it the same thing with the path that we already made. Because, well, you have the path that was intended and the path people often actually walk, which is usually not the same path. And we will use a bit of grass to just make sure they're not too large concentrated patches of one or the other. And I already like the way this looks. We'll continue on with some floors. And for the floors, I would like to use two different textures. One is for the kitchen, and it's stone. And I often use stone texture for the kitchen because it differentiates it from the rest of the house. It's very obvious that this is a different room, so it conveys a strong message. And also it's just nice to have some different colors, and you have some cool overlays that we can put on here as well. Now we'll add in the wooden floor for both the hallway and the living room, and we're going to drop the layers and put it a bit further in the back. There we go. Now, one of the most important things is a staircase. It's a very key element of a house. We want to add it as well because we want to add a roof on top, or a building on top. I'm not entirely sure if we'll be making the room itself actually, but I might, because it might be interesting to show you guys how I go about making the roofs on the side of the building, as well as multiple layers. And if that's something you're interested in, please let me know in the comments, and I'll be sure to include it in the tutorial if you like. We'll put the grid on, we'll snap the grid, and we're going to make it a nice corner here, a corner staircase. And we have the basics down already. Now I want to add a bit of interesting textures to the floor, and we're going to do this with the built-in patterns that are already made by Forgotten Adventures. As you can see, I'll do it again for you. This one adds a bit of depth. It has like a checkered pattern where some tiles appear to be a bit lower than they are than the others. So this is just something very easy. You slap it over it and it looks really good. Another way of doing this, if you're interested, is you use one of the shadow overlays, you turn off snap to grid, and you just make a few tiles a bit darker, as if they are either discolored or just lower than the rest in general. And you can just put it over a few tiles here and there. It's a nice little trick you can use. You don't have to. I think the regular and built-in set is more than sufficient, but for those of you who want to do a little extra, that's the way to go. And there's also this wood grain texture, which is great, that we can put over this floor. It's not too invasive. You also have a few severe ones, but I don't want to do this for now. It's a house people live in and they try to keep it up to date. And while we're at it, I think we're gonna add a pebble one for outside as well, just to have some pebbles laying around. This one, these ones are a bit big. Yeah, I like this more. And we'll put it on below water, -100, and just that's a bit too much. We'll go even below ground, There we go. So we don't have them indoors. And it just gives a little bit of interesting things to look at. Not just grass, but also a few pebbles here and there. Okay, now we have our room layout done. We are going to add the first pieces of furniture that are very defining for the layout of your house. These are the same pieces of furniture that you probably have in your house, like a table, a dinner table, which are very large and require a practical place in your living room. They're always quite central. You can't shove them away in a corner, otherwise you can't use them very well. So we're going to be adding a table, a dinner table. And I'd like to use a different color than the rest of the house just to make it stand out a little bit, and we'll turn off snap to grid and I'll position it right here so that it is in still a practical place in the room, and you have some space left on the top and on the bottom to place some stairs. And we're going to add another table here, I think. That's great. So they can cut some vegetables on there as well. And while we're at it, let's add a stove. And we'll use a bit of a older one, which is nice and rusty. We'll leave a little bit of space between the table, and we will position this over here. And we're going to put this a bit higher because we want to perhaps position a bucket or anything underneath. Same goes for the table. We have some chairs, and we want to put some shadow paths over them later as well. Let's see, we have some chairs. We need some chairs. And the chairs we are going to put at the table, perhaps a bit at an angle like this, because, well, people are interacting with these pieces of furniture all the time, and it really conveys a tone of somebody living there. If everything is perfectly placed and very neat, very organized, that's not really natural. I actually had somebody quote me, and I think it's a perfect sentence: life is messy. And if that's something you keep in mind while making your maps, they will look that much more organic already. So that's what we want to do as well. And it's not wrong to just, you know, put one or two chairs that are actually nicely against the side of the table. You can do that, that's fine. But I also like them to be a bit at an angle. Also change the colors around a bit, that they are not all the same color, because if the whole room looks very uniform, that's also not very natural for like a small rural house as this. People are not that rich, they don't have the money to buy matching pieces of furniture, or at least I don't imagine. They very often might just use the wood that they find in the forest nearby. So we're going to add a nice comfy chair as well. And we're going to make this the same wood as the table. And I would like a nice green color. I always put them a bit to the gray side to make sure that they are the colors are not too vibrant. I don't really like that. I prefer it like this, but I guess that's a matter of taste. And we'll add in a table, a side table for this as well. Let's see, nice and square one. And we'll put this on layer 2 to make sure it's above the armrest over here. Make it a bit smaller and just put it right there. Now we still need a cupboard of sorts, or places to store a few things. So we do cupboard, and we'll add something that looks quite nice, but practical to the living room. There we go, a few drawers in there, that's perfect. And I want something even more practical, like a shelves in the kitchen, and we can use it to store a few sacks of grain or a crate or a chest or whatever. Doesn't have to be too fancy, but it looks good. We'll make it a bit smaller and we'll position it over here. I think I'm going to leave this corner open for now, perhaps to make an area where they can wash some dishes or just have some crates there with a few supplies. They don't really have a storage room or anything, but we'll get to that later. For now, this is about as far as I want to go in this video. You can see that they still have quite an organic pathway from door to door. You don't bump into a ton of chairs or other pieces of furniture. And I will continue to add a few extra things, a rug here and there, to the 2 or 3 rooms, and then eventually we'll go into the smaller details like plates and cups and bottles and whatever. If you like this video, then please hit the favorite, like or subscribe button, and I hope to see you again in the next video.